Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It is time once again for another episode of Blitz Boys. Slade, Nick, and I are all here to break down the first week of bowl games is complete, wrapping up, heading into week two, and we're also going to talk about early National Signing Day, the transfer portal, everything going on. Talk about our respective teams as well. We have a lot to get into. Let's go ahead and get this week's episode of Blitz Boys started. So as we mentioned, we're about a week into bowl games. There's been a few played already. We had a bunch on Saturday, one on Monday, and one on Tuesday as well. No bowl games as we're recording on Wednesday night, which was pretty fucking stupid, but that's just me. I'll probably talk about ESPN later. But let's go ahead. Let's talk about the bowl games that we've had so far to this point. First up, uh, the bowl game that kicked everything off was the Myrtle Beach Bowl this year between Georgia Southern and Ohio. Ohio wins 41-21. Your guys' thoughts on that game, Nick. We'll go to you first. Just your general thoughts on the game and a lasting impression that you have from that game.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having trouble bringing my notes here up here on the phone. But a good start to the bowl season. These early games aren't necessarily the best matchups, but they're a good chance for teams that usually don't get a lot of national spotlight. To kind of have that first second, get noticed, play against a team that they might not normally play against like ever. Sometimes you get rematches and whatnot, but again, good opportunity to start the bowl season out. I'm happy to start getting into some of the more I don't want to say exciting because all college football is exciting, but into some of these bigger games we have coming up.
Slade.
Yeah, I think that this kind of sets a precedence towards what we see with bowl games a lot. Some teams are like, our season's not over. We got one more game left. This is what we're going to do. And other teams are like, you know what, we're going to go out and try our best, but we're also not going to bust our asses for 2 weeks leading up to this. And I think that this is what we're going to see a lot throughout this. You also have maybe not in this game as much, but as we go on in bowl season, ton of kids sitting out, ton of guys that are maybe going to play the first quarter just to say they played in the game and then sit out, the rest of the game. So it's really hard from a fan's perspective to be like, Ohio's been so much better this year. They definitely are going to win this game, and then
Mhm.
maybe three of their five starting offensive line sit the game or something, and this could be completely different.
Yeah. Um, I mean, we've already started talking about, so we might as well keep going. So the big conversation, obviously, every year is that bowl games don't matter. What's the point of having all these bowl games? And I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I do understand the argument, and that there's a fair amount of bowl games that are kind of pointless. Obviously, they try and spice it up a little bit by having this huge trophy that the conference winner gets, or whatever conference has the most bowl wins at the end of the year gets. And that's a cool little incentive. But again, yeah, with the playoff and the way that the playoffs are going to expand is we're going to lose more and more meaning behind these bowl games. I would thoroughly enjoy it. It almost feels like we've kind of lost the competitiveness between conferences, and the bowl tie-ins. I feel like don't matter as much. Where it would be really cool to see, like there be more stakes on the line between a Sun Belt and a MAC team going against each other, more so than just, hey, we won a bowl game, and we get to feel good about ourselves and head into the off season. Because I really enjoy a lot of these games. We're going to get to a few games here in a minute that I thought were spectacular football games, and the reason why we enjoy bowl season, and we can't wait for this time of year to come around. But again, I feel like with the way the landscape of what college football is now, I understand that in the general public eye, the bowl season's kind of falling out of favor. We're really only waiting for maybe the New Year's Six, but most importantly, we're really waiting for the college football playoffs. And next year, when we go to the 12 team, the New Year's Six is going to be in the playoffs. So there's just no outside incentive bowl games to kind of get to outside of, hey, we're going to go play in a bowl. We'll get some extra TV money. Our conference gets extra TV money, all that stuff. Um, and I had said earlier, I really feel like ESPN is just completely tone deaf. we look at all these media companies and basically how they ransacked college football the past couple of years, and they are the huge reason behind why we've had so much realignment across the board. And now all of a sudden, Chip Kelly in his press conference before the LA Bowl, he goes on and he's this is how I would fix college football. And ESPN for the entire week now has had him on like 4 different shows and well, like expand on your ideas a little bit more. And I'm like, it's hilarious to me that one of the companies responsible for the essentially what I feel like is the death of college football as we know it is sitting here saying, well, how do we fix it? And what's this is such a great idea. Why don't we do this? And it's just hysterical to me and borderline. I can't. My brain's not working.
I thought your mic went out there for a
No,
second.
I'm
That's
trying to
brain
think of the
dead.
right word, but as I'm trying to say the right word, the wrong word keeps coming in. But it's a hypocrisy. Is basically what
There you
ESPN
go.
is really frustrating. And I tweeted this the other day. We look at the bowl schedule, and Fox and CBS have great broadcasters across the board, and they put a lot of effort into the entire college football season. They get one bowl game each. Fox gets the fucking Holiday Bowl, and CBS gets the Sun Bowl. And I made the point or also that CBS, even though next year obviously they're moving away from SEC coverage, just completely going to ESPN for years. SEC and CBS, those have been in sync, and they've never once covered an SEC bowl. They got the Sun Bowl, which has always been the Pac-12, ACC. I think some other team like conferences have rotated in there, but it was never an SEC bowl game. And so the fact that CBS kind of gets stuck with that, and these announcers basically have to learn entirely new teams and all this other stuff. I don't get, but again, only giving them one bowl game each is I hate it. And then Barstool Sports is obviously bought the Arizona Bowl, but that's gonna be broadcast on the CW network, which has become an affiliate of ESPN. Um, I
That's also live on Barstool TV,
yeah,
like on
it
their own
is.
website. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, I guess what I'm trying to get at this is I have my own idea of how we can kind of fix bowl season, but let me ask you guys first. What would be your ideas to improve bowl season as we know it, and get away from this feeling that a lot of these games are meaningless and we don't really care about them or the general public doesn't care about them. How do we add interest back into these bowl games? How do we make it more fun? And obviously, I feel like regardless of what we talk about or whatever happens, opt outs are still going to be a thing. And I don't hate kids opting out. I mean, to protect your future, I get that. I'm perfectly fine with that. No amount of money that could get paid to you to play one last game or anything like that is worth risking, kind of a guaranteed future. And so I get that's always gonna be a part of it. But how would you fix bowl season or just I don't know general ideas on how to improve it? Slade, I'll go to you first.
I mean, I know that you don't like this answer, but I think that they are trying to do that by. I think that we were going to run into this. If they continue with the 14 playoff, I think we were going to run into this where the bowls just don't mean anything. Every kid
Right.
that has a chance at going to the draft or gets a chance at going to a open workout with one of these NFL teams, they're not going to play in the bowl game unless they think that they need that to get the opportunity. But at this point, a lot of those guys already know from their agent or whoever they've signed up with that they're going to be able to get the opportunity that they can show what they've got once they get to that meeting or that workout. But I just think that the playoff moving to a larger scale now, even if they did move to an even larger scale down the road, like we see with the D2 football, like you talk about, or FCS, right?
Mhm.
I think that having something that they're actually working for, it's not just an end of the year game that if you win, you get a trophy, but really not everyone's watching because there's also 3 other games going on for a trophy that kind of really doesn't mean as much. Usually that's how it was. I think now that there's this tournament at the end of the year that you get to play in, I mean this tournament, if LSU made it, you'd be seeing Jaden Daniels playing it. If
Mhm.
Oregon made it, you'd be seeing Bo Nix playing it. If uh, Georgia made it, you'd see Brock Bowers and their quarterback playing it. I mean, I just think that I think I don't know if there's a perfect way, my personal thought, to fix bowl season as a whole. But I think in terms of getting more of the bowl games to mean something, I think opening it up to a larger playoff format is definitely going to do that because I don't think you're going to see any player sit in the new 12 game format, 12 team format.
Yeah.
I think that it would be very dumb and selfish of that person, and they'll be looked upon like that by their teammates if they're like, "Hey, we made the playoff, but we're the 12th seed, so I'm still going to sit out this game. That's what's best for my future."
Right.
And I think that NFL teams would look at that and be like, really? You didn't want to play in like the biggest game that your team's going to play all season? Like,
Right. Nick, any extra thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, no, Slade covered everything that I would have wanted to say. I mean, we can sit here and, we could create all different kinds of fun trophies or all different weird prizes or whatever we want. But at the end of the day, these bowl games don't affect, like, your team will get to claim that they're a bowl game champion. But let's be honest, as sports fans that sit here and talk about how great a team is, we list national championships. We don't list bowl games. Um, so, like Slade said, expanding to that FCS style playoff and making the bowl games, those playoff games is really the only way I see um, to counteract so much early transfer and all that stuff.
Yeah.
one thing I
Oh, go
wanted to
ahead.
add real quick also is that, like, so just in terms of bowl games at the end of the season, George, we talk about Penn State not being able to get over the hump. They're always going to go 10-2. A lot of teams would love to be Penn State and go 10-2.
Mhm.
But Nick and I, as Penn State fans, are like, this really sucks that we go 10-2 every year and can't beat Michigan and Ohio State. Uh, on the other side, they beat some of the best teams in the nation at the end of the year in the bowl game every year. I think that James Franklin has like 6 bowl game wins or something like that, somewhere close to that. So I mean, it's like Penn State's an awesome bowl team the last couple years, but who were they playing? Did Utah play all their best players last year? Probably not. Did the team before that play all? Like, is Ole Miss going to play all their best players this year? I don't know. You know, so I agree that the bowl games need to mean something, and I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on how things can change. But I do think that there needs to be something, like Nick was saying, that something out there that's meaningful to fight
Right.
for the bowl games to mean more.
Yeah. I think in like the grand scheme of things for like Power Five schools, I think the expectation of missing the playoffs and kind of realizing your season's over, is never going to change. No matter what we do, even if we expand the playoffs, I still think adding kind of a meaningless bowl game to those schools isn't going to mean the most or really change anything. But I think bowl season is the perfect place for group of 5 teams to kind of show off what they are and what they're made of, and how good a lot of those players are. Because again, like Nick said back at the beginning, a lot of these teams don't get national attention at all. They don't get put on national TV throughout the season. And I think if we let bowl season die, a lot of those kids are now losing any chance that they had of making a great impression to maybe possibly transfer to another school or a last ditch effort to, hey, look how good I am, please draft me or sign me to your XFL team, whatever the case may be. So I think one thing that might help across the board, and NIL is broken, and it's become far beyond what we ever thought it would. When we first brought up NIL, and that's what we wanted, and this is what should happen. We wanted kids to not get penalized for signing autographs or taking a picture with a fan and stuff like that. Or selfishly, we just wanted the NCAA video games back. Give them a small portion of money. But obviously the sponsorships and brand deals and everything, kids are making multi-million dollars. I'm not saying kids don't deserve to get their money and all this stuff. It just it, when the NCAA introduced it, they just took their hands off and they said just run with it, have fun, whatever. And everybody across the board has now kind of realized that wasn't the right approach. But shocking, the NCAA fucked up something. But um, again, even though it's broken, I think it would be wise for a lot of these sponsors to introduce NIL incentives or like, hey, you made a bowl game, here's every player on the team gets X amount of dollars. Maybe even introduce if you win, you're getting paid this amount. If you win, we'll give the whole team, another bonus. I think that would help a little bit. But like I said, in the grand scheme of things, when we're looking at these group of 5 schools mainly, because with Penn State, although they're I'm sure a lot of kids are excited to go play in the Peach Bowl and have the opportunity to play Ole Miss. They missed the playoffs. That was their goal this season. They're going to be very disappointed in general. So if I look at a group of 5 school, um, I think we have 20 games. I think you take the top 2. I mean, we can even add more, maybe do top 3, but take the top 2 out of every conference. We'll mix them up in a bag, and they can play whoever, and we can decide like a group of 5 champion, or what group of 5 conference is the best, or how, get some bragging rights for the year. I think that adds an element to the games again that would make me definitely want to watch. I feel like it would make a lot of other people want to watch. And we're not just throwing bowl games out the window and saying, well, we'll add some bowl games to an expanded playoff or something like that. Um, I as much as I love all these bowl games, there's probably a bit too much. And ESPN again, the way they broke the schedule down this year, just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. With games overlapping on some days we don't have any games like today. Other days we only have one game. So the schedule doesn't make sense. But if we cut some of those games down and we make it a bowl challenge for again the group of five schools, and maybe we can add a couple more with teams that just missed the playoff, but hey, here's your chance for some bragging rights, extra, one last push
So
and
essentially
say,
a college football NIT.
yeah, yeah, kind of. But again, at that point, that this is bringing us back, and we had the conversation a couple weeks ago when we were talking about how we would fix the playoffs. You know, I, I was making the case again for, we can't just completely leave group of five out every year because again, that's not fair. What's the point of having them being Division One football if they're not ever going to get a chance? And I understand they're never going to be on the same level as Alabama, but to never have the chance to prove that they are, one of the top 12 teams in the country or that they deserve any shot at a national championship, what is the point of having them at this level? Why are we not just creating another level or just merging it with the FCS, whatever, so on and so forth? And again, as much as fun as it would be to, like Nick said, essentially make it like an NIT tournament. I'm not even saying make it a tournament. I'm just saying 20 bowl games. That's all we get. And Sun Belt plays one against the MAC, one against the Mountain West, and so on and so forth. Whoever's the best record, is so called the best conference or whatever. Um, but again, that kind of goes back to the whole point of diminishing and separating the Power Five and Group of Five even more, and saying again, why are they here? So again, it's not perfect, but I think that's one way that we could add enthusiasm to bowl games. Um, because I mean, I feel like it's not a lot of Group of Five schools that have kids sitting out. Again, like we said, it's the kids going to go number one over or first round, second round, whatever it may be. Um, and all due respect, a lot of them are coming from Group of Five schools, but you
Do
were
you
going to say
think
something. Slade.
do you think that the playoffs right now is basically a smaller version of what you're saying with the tournament? That the SEC has basically proved that they're the best conference over the history of the
Mhm.
the playoff so far, and you have the other conferences. You have the ACC who had Clemson win. You have what did Oregon won?
No, they made it once. They lost to Ohio State.
Ohio State. Yeah,
Yeah, you
Big
fuck.
Ten
Yeah,
has one, but but yeah, I'm just saying. Like I mean, I think that I think the SEC has won like 6 times or something like that. It's
yeah. It's an
between
absurd.
Alabama and Georgia. So I wonder if you think that on a larger scale, if we would see more of a shakeup in the the best conference that year each year. Where you get like the Sun Belt had the most wins and they're the best group of five this year, or do you think it would still be the same where it's the same conferences winning
No,
the same
I
thing?
think the Group of Five is a lot more volatile than what people realize. I've really think, and especially like again, like I said, if we're taking the top two schools, like the American looked like one of the best conferences for years and years and years. And I mean, it was a down year for them, and I mean, they still had two teams basically right on the verge of the top 25 the entire season. They almost made another New Year's Six bowl. Um, but no, I feel like it would be a lot more volatile than what we see the top tier, the Power Five
Mm-hmm.
schools be. And obviously, I'm not discrediting what the SEC has done, but I also feel like college football it works in cycles. And before the SEC was got to this point, it was a Pac-12 for a little bit. The Big 12 was also up there. I mean, you think back a little bit further. Nebraska was in the Big 12, but still, Nebraska went on other runs. It, it for that stretch, you think back to the late '90s, early 2000s before Alabama really became the powerhouse that they are. LSU, had a few good years. I feel like the SEC wasn't, while they were still very good and they had great teams every once in a while, they weren't on that same kind of level. And then, recruiting shifted and we had these great recruiters in Urban Meyer and uh, Nick Saban. Oh my God, I couldn't think of his name. But and then all of a sudden they swung the tide. Now I really feel like we're seeing. I don't want to say we're seeing the tide swing, but we're seeing these great recruiters pop up in other places. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but Dane Lanning is a very good recruiter. We've seen that today. Ryan Day, good recruiter. Jim Harbaugh, and now maybe the power's swinging. The Big Ten is going to be loaded next year. Maybe the power's going to swing, but we don't know what's going to happen. But college football works in cycles, is all I'm saying. And even if we get like an American, say they go on like a 10-year run where they're just winning this challenge every year, I really feel like sooner or later, a tide would swing back the other way. And in the grand scheme of things, again, I think the group of five is more. We thought Ohio this year was going to be a lot better. Thought Eastern Michigan was going to be a lot better, and all of a sudden, both of those programs, Eastern Michigan more so, just fell off a cliff. They barely scrapped into a bowl game. We don't think they have any shot in their bowl game, so on and so forth. So I think it's harder to judge these group of five schools because there's so many outside factors. And then the last thing I'll say is, we talk about, you talked about it, is that kind of like a what we feel like would happen. The 14 playoff, the one thing I think the 12-team playoffs is going to do better, the 14 playoff, and as much as we talked about this again, and I don't mean to keep harping on it, we always say the four best teams or the four most deserving teams. We have that debate, and it's a very arbitrary argument over who those four best teams are. 12-team playoffs is going to expand a little bit better. We got to argue over the last couple teams to get in, but for the most part, we know kind of the top 6, top 8, or whatever, really have a good shot at it. And so I feel like the 14 playoff, not as much, but maybe the 12-team playoff will be a better representation of that, because maybe that team that was in 5th this year, like a Florida State, obviously next year they're going to prove that they really were one of the best teams in the country, and so on and so forth. So the 12-team playoff maybe, but the 4-team, just kind of the way we, again, decided those 4 teams, maybe not. But yeah. Let's get back to the games. We got a little off topic there, off track, but it's okay. The New Orleans Bowl. The last thing I want to talk about with the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Georgia Southern, I was really disappointed with how their season finished. They started 4-1. That one loss was on the road at Wisconsin. They still looked very good, and now they finished 6-7. Not the greatest year, down the stretch, only going 2-6. Ohio, Ricky Hunt, 5 touchdowns, named to watch next year. He was a true freshman this year. Absolutely insane performance. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Moving on, we had the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. Jacksonville State, the Cinderella story. We sat here, we begged, we pleaded for the NCAA to let them and James Madison in the bowl game. Jacksonville State delivers a thriller. That was a fantastic game, back and forth the entire way. It goes overtime. Jacksonville State gets a stop, and then they turn on to kick a field goal. So they win their first bowl game in their first year, kind of fully in the FBS level. That final score was 34-31. The Cure Bowl was the Rain Bowl this year. That was one of the ugliest football games I've watched, mainly just because of the weather. 13 total fumbles in that game, not even close to the NCAA Division I record. Miami, Ohio had 44 passing yards. App State had 211, and it was still a close game. 13-9 victory for App State. Way to bounce back after losing the conference championship in heartbreaking fashion. The New Mexico Bowl, we had a little bit of drama. So Fresno State just manhandled New Mexico State 37-10. Afterwards, Jerry Kill, head coach of New Mexico State, has a press conference, just starts ripping into New Mexico and how the University of New Mexico hosted the bowl game. New Mexico State is obviously a very huge rival of New Mexico. And when they played there earlier this year, Pavia, the quarterback for New Mexico State, decided to piss all over I guess the indoor training facility, and New Mexico did not like that. So when New Mexico State came to train for the bowl game, New Mexico did not let them use the practice facility. So they got limited practice time. Jerry Kill ripped into them and everything. First of all, why you would think letting your rival play at your school would be a good idea, I don't know. But that goes back to the complaint I had when we did our show a couple weeks ago. We had how many schools? Was it 7 schools? 28 schools playing in their own state. And then you had 7 schools within 100 miles. Schedule better. Then we had the LA Bowl, UCLA 35, Boise State 22. This was a pretty good game. Boise State just kind of stalled out late. The magic of their head coach. Maybe the problem was they actually hired him. They should have waited till after the bowl game to hire him. When they fired the first Avalos, the first head coach, made this guy the interim. They went on a huge run. They win the Mountain West Championship. They hire him on, and then they turn around, they lose their first bowl game. Still, you lost to a Power 5 school 35-22. ruined our parlay. We had a great parlay going, and watch now everything's going to hit, and that's going to be the one leg that doesn't. But it's okay. We still love you, Boise State. You still got a really cool field. So, and then the last bowl we had on Saturday was the Independence Bowl. Texas Tech 34, Cal 14. I think the funniest part of all of this was Cal Twitter, which I didn't realize existed. But Cal Twitter was going off on Justin Wilcox after the game, and the fact that he got them back to 6-6, and they made a bowl game. All this other stuff did not matter. They wanted him fired because their last 3 bowl games they got blown out by 20 points. I'm like, it's really sad that it takes a bowl game for you guys to realize that your head coach sucks. Then we moved on to Monday. We had a fantastic game Monday. I did not make it back in time from Cleveland to go to this game. I really wanted to because tickets were like $20 to sit literally front row. And so let that be if you have some of these lesser bowl games around you, go watch because they're a lot of fun. Two, they're pretty cheap. The Duke's Mayo Bowl is like $80. I was like, I ain't fucking going to that. Anyway, Famous Toastry Bowl, Western Kentucky was down 28-0. They stormed back and they win 38-35 in overtime. An absolutely insane game. There was like 6 Sports Center top 10 plays, worthy plays. I think only one made it. But still, it was just an insane game. Great game on Monday. And then last night we had the Frisco Bowl, UTSA and Marshall. UTSA wins 35-17. Marshall, just like their season, they ran out of gas. They led 14-0 and they turned around and lose 35-17. Also, shout out to the Frisco Bowl for again having something. The Famous Toastry Bowl, they had toast. They were throwing toast everywhere. That was cool. Frisco Bowl, they doused the head coach in a gigantic cup of iced coffee. I thought that was really cool. In his press conference, he was talking about how he had coffee down his crack. So again, we talk about bowl season. You're not going to get this shit anywhere else. So enjoy it.
One of the interesting things also was Western Kentucky's quarterback that played in the game. He, at the beginning of the season, had entered the transfer portal, was told that he was going to be a tight end for the team if he continued to play there, and then threw for like 400 yards and 5 touchdowns in that game.
Yeah. And he didn't even start the game. They benched the starter because he threw 2 interceptions. So I mean, what a great story! I mean, he's a hometown guy to Western Kentucky. He definitely.
Yeah, they asked the coach after. They're like, "Do you think he's going to reconsider?" Look, well. Now it's probably
I think the head coach needs to reconsider who's quarterback.
I was going to say, he wanted to make this kid a tight end. He's out here throwing for 400 yards.
Yeah.
So looking at all those bowl games I just talked about, I ran through pretty quickly. What has been your favorite bowl game so far, and why? Slade, we'll let you go first on this one.
I mean, that game was very good just because of the drama. You get the ESPN updates like, oh, Old Dominion's up 28. Then you get, oh, wow, they're coming back.
I took Old Dominion in our Capital One Bowl Mania. I was like, fuck yeah, like perfect. They're running away with this, and then so
I picked off mascots this year. I went with Western Kentucky. But I think that last night's game was my favorite so far. I still think that, I mean, call it favoritism, but non-playoff. I think that Penn State Ole Miss has the chance to be the best bowl game. I don't think that we're going to get what we deserve with Florida State and Georgia in terms of the players that will play. I also think that Oregon should have been playing someone of much more talent. Penn State, and Ole Miss, Georgia, any of Florida State, even Florida State, I think is a better option than who they ended up with. So I think that right now UTSA Marshall last night was my favorite game so far.
Nick, your favorite one so far?
Yeah, so a little hard to pick between the Toastery and the New Orleans Bowl, but I got to give it to New Orleans, mainly because, like you said, we begged and pleaded for Jacksonville State to even get into a bowl game. They not only got into that bowl game, but proceeded to show why they deserve to be in that bowl game the whole time. I know you say what you want about opt outs and stuff like that, but it was good to see that. I mean, a blowout would have sealed the deal a little more. It would have been like, yeah, they definitely deserve to be here. But when it comes to college football and the craziness that comes along with it, I mean, this was exactly what you asked for in a college football game.
Yeah. That was a great game and really a fantastic way to start the bowl season. My favorite one though, since you took the New Orleans Bowl, I'll take the Famous Toastry Bowl. Again, first of all, great sponsor. I know you guys don't have those up there. This is kind of a southern thing. When you guys come visit me, I will take you to Famous Toastery. It is spot on. Really good food. They do stuffed French toast. I know that they're not the only place to do it, but they do really good stuffed French toast. And maybe they want to sponsor us. They sponsor Bowl Game Famous Toastery. Maybe they should sponsor us, and I will tell everybody about the kick-ass food you guys have.
They don't have
But
to. You just did.
yeah,
Yeah.
We just
I mean,
mentioned Famous Toastery every episode, and you're giving
yeah,
out ads.
exactly. But this was a super fun game. I was so excited to watch this the entire way. And this was a perfect bowl game to me. You have a kind of a crazy sponsor. They had a toast mascot, which I thought was cool. You know, the perfect celebration afterwards, throwing toast everywhere. But the game itself was awesome. You had somebody pull away, a huge comeback, drama late, all this other stuff. Still, one burning question I have, and nobody else has pointed this out or even responded to it. And I think it's a bit of a conspiracy theory, but I really feel like the Western Kentucky kicker gave double birds to the Old Dominion sideline as he kind of ran down the field. Because if you watch the video, I sent it to you guys and nobody reacted. Nick like laughed at the text where I said, I'm pretty sure the Western Kentucky kicker like flipped off the bench. But you see him wave, and then you see the second hand come up, and you can't make out what it is. And normally ESPN, like when they're showing like replays and stuff or whatever, because like they had the camera on him because they cut to it later, but like they didn't show like watching him like normally they show the kicker watch the kick go through and then he starts celebrating or whatever. They refuse to show that part. They just show the part where he's like jumping around and celebrating with
You
his
think they
teammates
edited
afterwards.
out?
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm pretty sure he's run down the field going like this, which I makes it even fucking funnier to me. But again, that was definitely one of the best bowl games we've had so far. It's gonna be hard to top that going forward. But looking at that, the upcoming week alone, what bowl game are you guys most excited for in this just the upcoming week? Nick, you can go first this time.
Yeah. One I've had my eye on since the bowl matchups were announced is the Kansas versus UNLV. Kansas is currently 12.5 point favorites, but I feel like this is a big opportunity for UNLV, to boost the program and show that they can compete against some of these top teams, bowl game or not. Especially after having the successful season that they did. And that can be huge fuel to pull off an upset. And obviously that helps in recruiting, especially when you're you know recruiting around 3 stars or less, because everybody stole all the top talent. Like maybe you steal a top talent. We've seen it, with the other teams here in the past couple years. So good opportunity for UNLV, and I think they got a good chance to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Slade.
Yeah, one thing I did want to mention real quick because you talked about the toastery mascot is did you guys see that for the Pop Tart Bowl the mascot is edible?
No way.
So throughout the game, it's going to be like a person in a costume, and then like at the
Yeah.
end of the game,
At
he's
the end
going
of
to
the game,
transform.
there's like
Yeah, he's
yeah.
going to transform into a gigantic edible Pop Tart, and the winning team is
Yeah.
supposed to eat the Pop Tart, which I think is just beyond weird. And
Yeah,
like again,
that's what I was
this is
gonna
what we
say.
love about bowl season. But the fact that you're announcing it like the guy's going to transform and then you can eat him, I think is just the wrong way to put that. But I mean, I'm excited to see what happens between NC State and KC in that game.
The game that I'm picking though is the Armed Forces Bowl. I think JMU versus Air Force is going to be electric. I think that there's a lot of transfers out of JMU already. Their coach left. They're like, we had a great season, but we were here with this coach, rightful. But I think that Air Force was just on a heater to start the season, and then they just kind of had a couple of hiccups. That game against Army, and was it Army? Is Army the one they lost 28-3 to or something like that? Yeah. Yeah. And so I just think that it has a really good way to end the season for either team, and so I think it's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, you guys both took the ones I was looking at, but I'm also looking at the Gaspirilla Bowl, which this Friday, Slade, Nick, and I are going to be live streaming a watch along. It's our annual bowl game, Swear Jar Sweat. It was actually the same exact bowl game last year, but we're putting our money on the UCF money line, and also every score, so field goal, touchdown, all that stuff. We're going to eat a hot wing. I don't handle heat well. These two, they eat hot wings all the time. They're going to be fine. I'm going to be dying. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a bunch of trivia. We'll have some other stuff. Some friends might be stopping by to hang out with us. It's going to be a great time. We're going to be better entertainers this year than we were last year. We've learned our lesson. It's not going to be 20 minutes of awkward silence and then Slade trying to be like, what do you think about this? So we're going to be better prepared. It's going to be a lot more fun. So we hope you guys join us. Friday. Game kicks off at 6:30. So we'll be there. Hopefully, you guys join us as well. It's going to be a ton of fun. But that is a game I'm very excited for, just because I get to hang out with you three, Jesus, you two. Yeah. Drink some beer, eat some hot wings, and have a good time. So make sure you guys join us over there. It's going to be a bunch of fun. Today was National Early Signing Day. And the college football schedule is so weird. And this is another thing I want to talk about later, but I also don't want to get us into like a 30-minute rant again. But nonetheless, we'll start here. Um, Early National Signing Day. It was a very wild day, especially for me as an Oregon fan. The amount of guys we got to flip to us. Some teams had a very bad day. Some teams had a very good day. To you guys, who is the most impressive and the most disappointing team so far with early signing day drawn to a close? Nick, we'll let you go first this time.
All right. So first up, most impressive. Just looking at pure rankings, not necessarily analyzing, holes on each team and whatnot.
Mhm.
Um, I have to go with Auburn as far as most impressive.
Oh, fuck,
They
we picked the
currently have
same fucking
this.
team.
Of course, we did always.
They have
They
the
have
number 8
the
class right
seventh
now.
ranked best. Well, it depends on which site you look at. I
Yeah,
think I
exactly.
looked at 247. I forgot to write it down. Um,
I don't know. I'm
but
trying to think.
they're competing. s- No, you're good. They're competing. I'm going to use that term loosely with Georgia and Alabama on the recruiting trail. Obviously, a decent gap there, but to still be in the top 10 in the SEC competing against those two, obviously you're not doing a bad job. And just managing to at least attempt to recruit on the same level as them. They had a pretty good season. They gave Georgia a scare. So if they can keep this recruiting up, obviously that's going to benefit them in the long run, and maybe get lucky and catch one of the two powerhouses off guard one week. And as far as disappointing, uh, I don't say a lot of bad things about Penn State. I'm pretty big homer, but Penn State is definitely on my list of most disappointing so far. Uh, they are ranked one place higher than Michigan, which recruiting is cool, but until those recruits beat them on the field, I could really care less how far we could be 20 spots ahead of Michigan. And yeah, we got the number one tight end in the country, which we've done well with tight ends the last couple years. We got 8 4-star recruits so far. It's disappointing because, not even close to recruiting, like some of these other elite recruiting teams, and that's the one thing that Franklin is supposed to be elite at. And our top 3 wide receiver recruits are all 3 stars. We don't have one 4-star, 5-star wide receiver recruit, and wide receiver talent is what we need, which, at this point, it's gonna be relying on the transfer portal, which honestly is probably harder than recruiting. Um But yeah, you know, we're sitting here talking about how do we get over the hump and, make runs at national championships, and being that far down in the recruiting is not a good way to do it.
I'll talk about Auburn since they were my most impressive team because again, they did slip a little bit in the rankings today. I don't know what time you looked, Nick, but when I looked at 24/7, they were number 8, so that's why I had them at 8.
Uh,
Regardless, I think they started the day top 5, maybe 6th, and so they slipped a little bit down. Um, Still, it's very promising to see that Hugh Freeze kind of still has his recruiting touch. He was a very good recruiter at Ole Miss. That's why they were so good. Obviously, everything happened there. He goes to Liberty for a couple years. He comes back to the SEC. Everybody had questions. He had a top 25 class last year, but was he going to be able to build upon that and really continue to turn this program around? So the future is looking bright for Auburn. Obviously, they didn't have the year they wanted to this year, but I think there's big things ahead of them. And this for Hugh Freeze to get them inside the top 10, I think is a huge win. And I think it's only onwards up from here. He also came out. He gave a press conference today talking about how the recruiting style now is you recruit until the last minute, but you put a ton of effort into that final night before signing day, especially early signing day, to try and flip some of these guys. And he talked about how difficult that was to adjust to because that's kind of like a new practice. I feel like I feel like we didn't used to see these flips like we saw today. Um, but he spoke on that, and we were able to keep some guys left, and then we were able to pull a couple other guys in. So I'm excited to see where Auburn goes from here, and how this recruiting improves upon itself every year, or if it does. Slade, who was your most impressive and disappointing team?
My most impressive, and it's just off of one player. I mean, Matt Rule in Nebraska. I mean, he went on national television and blew it wide open. Nobody else in the world of college football wanted a coach going on there and saying it costs $2 million for a good quarterback in the portal right now. And he goes out, he gets a kid that has gone to like 5 freaking high schools. The kid transferred to Georgia for a high school that is like 30 minutes away from Athens and was supposed to be Georgia's next star boy. And he gets him to come back to Nebraska, which is the school he originally wanted to go to. He picked up a tight end and a couple of other guys in there. I just think that, I mean, this is his first year of actually being able to recruit the high schoolers to the school. And so I think that he did a great job. I think anyone that is able to recruit the top pocket passer from a Georgia or an Alabama to a school that really hasn't had the greatest last 10 years, in Nebraska, I think that's a huge pickup and a huge testament to show that, I mean, he's doing something different, because you're not seeing Nick Saban. Like, it would have been much less news if it was, oh, he flipped his commitment to Alabama all of a sudden, But the fact that he flipped to Nebraska is huge news. My disappointment, I think, is, I don't know. I want to say Texas, because I don't think they picked up a lot of guys. I think there's two ways that this whole new inaugural season with the 12-team playoff is going to go. You're going to have the teams that they're going to put their balls on the table, and they're going to say, look, we have this payroll. We're going to go out and buy every player we need for the team. We want to perform the first 2 years of the college playoff being 12 teams, so that then we can recruit high schoolers based on that resume. Or you have the people that are going to stick with the current route and, recruit out of high school and get them to the team and not really do much portal stuff, which is like a Dabo Sweeney, style coach. And so I think there's two ways. I don't know which way is going to be better, obviously. But, yeah, I think that Texas definitely, I think Sarkisian definitely showed where he's going with it. And it's more recruiting, or it's going to be more, using Texas money, because they didn't really do a lot of recruiting.
Yeah. So for my most disappointing, I actually took the whole conference of the Big 12. Their highest ranked team in the conference is Texas Tech, and they're 23 in the rankings right now. So I mean, this is kind of the fallout of, obviously, Oklahoma and Texas leaving is I think recruits are looking at that as there's not as much competition there now. And they're going to want to go to the Big Ten or the SEC, because they see kind of where the power in college football is going, at least the big name recruits. Now, I do at least want to shout out Texas Tech, because they just signed their first ever 5-star recruit today. Never happened in school history, which I thought was absolutely wild for a Power 5 school. But they just signed their first ever 5-star recruit today. So shout out to Texas Tech for doing that. I'm excited to see where they go next year. Obviously, they had a very down year this year from their expectations. I'm excited to see where they go next year, though. But I'm going to take the whole conference at the Big 12. And shout out to Colorado for being, not even in the top 100. I lied. I think they're up to 98th. So
I want to bring that up.
Yeah, go ahead.
What
Go off,
what
King.
what that kid did on national television is ridiculous. Jordan Sutton, I think, is his name.
You're talking about the kid that threw his hat?
No, he went on.
First take.
Yeah, first take or whatever.
Mhm.
He went on with
Skip Bayless.
Skip Bayless or whatever, and he said, I'm going to Colorado. Anyone that looks like us, and basically he's saying that.
I think his exact quote was, "If you're a dog and you want to fight, why you're not going to Colorado?"
Right, and so he does that. And it comes out today that he's going to Maryland. The dude said he was going to Colorado. He got on national television, not just any national television. He went on ESPN, the one that everyone in the world looks at. George just was like, I hate that they're running the whole thing, and or ruining the whole thing. Sorry. And he goes on there and says, I'm going to Colorado, then starts trying to recruit guys while he's on this national interview. You should come to Colorado. If you're a dog, if you want to fight, go out and prove it. Come to Colorado. And freaking 3 days later, he's the top recruit going to Maryland. I
mean, shout out Maryland, though. The fact that you were able to flip that kid Like,
Yeah.
I want to know what kind of watch the Maryland coach has that he's
Exa
flipping these guys.
the
Yeah.
fact that like, again, if it would be one thing if it was like an Alabama or Georgia or hell, even Michigan or Ohio State, something like that, but the
Mhm.
fact that Maryland is able to walk into this kid's living room and go, "This is why we think you should come here over Colorado," and the kid goes, "Fuck it, you're right." Like, that's the most
Now
surprising
Maryland
part.
does have Under Armour money, I will
I
say.
I get that, but still,
Yeah.
I mean, clearly that hasn't really worked out for them in the past
Right.
because,
Well, I'm just saying
um,
in terms of where they're able to
yeah,
legally use that money now, he could sign a deal with Under Armour, and
yeah,
that they can do the same thing that Oregon is doing right now. And the reason Dan Lanning didn't leave, which is something I wanted to ask you guys, should there be an amount of money that a team or a school is able to bankroll for this new NIL way of going? Because
again,
I feel like we're going into the same situation that we were in
mhm,
before NIL, where whichever team has the most money is going to win. Because
it
Oregon definitely has Phil Knight money behind them with all the recruits and everything they're getting. You know,
mhm,
Alabama, Georgia, they've had the money. They're going to continue to have the money. They're going to bring in these things. You're going to see. We didn't see it because Texas A&M switched to Mike Elko. There's going to be a little bit of a transition period there, but you're going to see that money flex down there. Maryland is someone that we might see flex their money with Under Armour being right there. But is there a certain amount that these schools should be able? I mean, I just don't understand.
yeah.
You said about Matt Rule. There's no rules. So, like,
Yeah.
what do you think should happen here? Like,
I I mean, I said this earlier, and I'll be quick with it, and I'll let Nick go. But this is never what we wanted NIL to become. Like, again, these kids are getting paid, great, good for you, and we're happy that you can do it. But when we first thought of NIL, this is not what we imagined. We didn't imagine a coach coming out and saying, "We'll give you," or it takes $1.5 million to get a really good quarterback to even consider your school. That's never what we wanted. We just wanted kids to not get penalized for using their name, image, or likeness, to go sign an autograph, to go play in it, to put themselves in a video game, stuff like that. And again, the NCAA fumbled the bag with this. Um, and I think there needs to be. I don't want to over govern it, but there needs to be some stipulations to this because again, like you said, this is it's getting a little crazy. We thought this would kind of level the playing field a little bit. How foolish we were. Um, the fact that obviously a lot of these schools have big donors. I mean, you brought up Texas already. Again, Oregon, Maryland, all these other schools and stuff. Obviously, there's a clear discrepancy between what you can make at one school versus what you can make at another. So yeah, I think there should definitely be a limit, but again, maybe we're already too far gone. Maybe we're too far past that because, clearly the NCAA is. I mean, we look at the transfer rules, where they've been a stickler for these rules, and then the kids kept suing them. So they finally they just came out and said, fine, whatever, transfer if you want to. We're not going to basically do anything to you anymore. And again, you guys laughed at me when I said this earlier this year. Maybe not as a whole, but maybe Division One college football itself, the NCAA is going to be defunct in a couple years. And you again with the college football playoff committee kind of running things already. Maybe we just see the NCAA could just control division or the FCS on down through 2 and 3, and this level of college football becomes its own thing. And you guys laughed at me, but every time we turn around, the NCAA is doing something dumb, or you just literally looking at the transfer portal and just going, do whatever you want. We don't care anymore. Maybe it's not so far fetched anymore. That's all I'm going to say. But Nick, Slade, you can go, and then Nick, I'll let you talk about if you think we should put a cap on this money.
yeah, I mean, I think that they were being pressured so much that this all should have been something they were thinking about for years. And it seems like in one off season they were like, you know what, fuck it, go for it. Like they should have already been thinking about stipulations and how they could advance the game of Division One college football. And like you said, instead it's like it's a free for all.
Mhm.
You're gonna have teams like Oregon, Alabama. The college football teams minus Washington because I don't think that they have this. I don't think they're gonna have Microsoft and whoever else is in Washington. Handing out contracts to these players, but I think you're going to see between the 5 years of eligibility with kids on a team, probably. I mean, what? There's 85 scholarship kids. you might see somewhere close to $50 million worth of players on one sideline during the season.
Yeah.
Of guys that have signed contracts to play at this school.
Nick, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I'm gonna make this quick. My computer's about to die, and I can't find my long cord. Um, I think that there definitely should be a cap. However, I don't really know how useful it's gonna be. There's all kinds of stories about these kids getting paid, to try to get them to come play at schools before NIL came out. The only thing NIL did is just make it so that one, you can offer them legal money, and two, when that legal money doesn't become enough, you can start slipping that under the table stuff in again. Um, so I don't know. Maybe the integrity of college football has changed with NIL. I doubt it, because there's just more millions of dollars floating around now. Um, but I think that for the sake of trying to make it better, there has to be a cap somewhere. Again, I don't know what that number is. I don't know what number makes sense for that. Whether you have to cap it by team or by position group or whatever the situation may be. That's for them to do hours and hours of research on and figure out. But there definitely needs to be something, um, because it literally is just it's turning college football into a professional league at this point.
Mhm.
And we already have one of those, so it's basically a farm system. Yeah, something needs to change.
Right. Um, so we'll move on. I mean, there wasn't much we were going to talk about anyway, but we'll try and do our top 5 draft quickly. So with the Swear Jar Sweat this Friday, obviously, like we said, every time there's a score, we're going to eat a hot wing. So we brought us back top 5 wings. We're going to do a draft. We did the Wheel of Destiny to decide the order. Slade, you get to go first overall. Go ahead and tell us why garlic parmesan is the best.
I don't think it's necessarily the best, but I want it on my list. So, and I know that it'll get taken if I go to the second round. So, in terms of my favorites, it's not my favorite, but it is one of my top 3, and so I'm going garlic parm.
Okay. I got second. I'm gonna take Old Bay or a Cajun rub. I really enjoy those wings. I prefer the dry rub. There is one Cajun kind of sauce I like, and if I need to, I'll take it later. But for right now, I'm gonna take Old Bay or a Cajun rub. I think Nick's computer died. Sure did.
You just keep it like that.
All right, Slade. Then you get your second pick.
Yeah, so my second one, this was my favorite wing flavor in college. There was a little wing place on campus. Mango habanero.
Oh, okay. I mean, that is one of the options that we could use for Friday if you want to.
Yeah.
My next pick, I'm gonna take lemon pepper. I think it's a great flavor. I love the lemon and the little bit of spice that comes with it. So I'm gonna take lemon pepper as my second pick.
My third one, I'm gonna go with Buckeye barbecue.
Mhm.
It's a spicy barbecue, so I like that. It's still the barbecue, tangy flavor, just
Yeah,
a little bit more heat.
stick to it. Okay. Um, I'm gonna take key lime kind of buffalo sauce. I found it in Key West last year. I really like it. Again, a little zesty to it. I don't mean that in the gay way. I probably can't say that, but a little zest to it. Also, again, some kick. I really like it, so I'm going to take key lime buffalo as my third pick.
So you say key lime buffalo is for gay people?
That is not what I said.
I'm kidding. So for my fourth, I'm just gonna go with medium. I think that that's a good one. That if you're going somewhere and you're like, I just need some quick wings. I just go with medium.
That is a good one. Um, I'm gonna take honey barbecue. I feel like that's a good staple. Um, again, you need a sweet wing in there, so give me a honey barbecue.
Okay. What my fifth? Wait, did you just take honey barbecue?
I did.
It's my favorite. um.
Should have took that over garlic parmesan.
No, because you would have picked it. I only had this once, but I'm gonna go with it was really good. Bourbon honey mustard. It's something different, kind of like garlic parm. But
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm gonna take. I don't want to take another barbecue. I'll take just classic buffalo. I mean, I feel like that's a little bit different than just mild, like you had said earlier. Um, but again, just a staple wing flavor. It's really good. Funny enough, Nick texted us and said that was going to be his first overall pick, but he should have charged his computer. So yeah, I'm going to take buffalo. But since he's gone and we have a little bit more time, he had already talked about how he was disappointed with Penn State and how they have done through early National Signing Day. Give me your thoughts and just your overall kind of feeling on your outlook for Penn State, how they're doing in the portal so far, their signing day. Are you starting to worry a little bit? Are you fine? Or what are your feelings towards the Nittany Lions, or even Texas? If you want to talk about Texas, I mean that's fine.
no, I'll go with Penn State. I think that I am a little worried. I think that we were in a situation where we just kind of had to try and beat Michigan and Ohio State. It was going to be like our Cinderella year if we were able to beat both those teams in the same year. It was going to be a great year if we were able to go 1-1 against those two teams. I think with the new conference alignments, the new everything, I think that Penn State's in a very vulnerable position because Penn State has had very great great recruiting classes under James Franklin. I don't know if you've kept up with Penn State through the last couple of years, but I mean they've had like top 5 recruiting classes over the last
Mhm.
couple of years, which is very surprising based on where they finish each year in the Big Ten.
Right.
And that's just in the Big Ten, not in the nation. So I mean they've finished around 10th or 11th the last couple of years in terms of the AP poll or the college football playoff poll, at the end of the year.
Right.
Yet they were recruiting somewhere around 5th or 6th. So it was like the numbers aren't adding up, and you only need to get past one of these two teams, to kind of break through that next layer. And they just weren't able to do it. And now you're going to introduce Oregon, who did phenomenal today, to the lineup of teams that you have to try and outperform in the year, and
Right.
they're not going to play them every year, but they're not going to play Ohio State every year. They're not going to play Michigan every year now. And so it's just like, I think that they were at a really good opportunity with James Franklin. It was their chance this year. It was their chance 3 years ago with Saquon and Trace McSorley. I mean, I really think that they had their chances to break through and they didn't. And I think that we are very close to going into mediocrity where we're kind of middle of the pack, almost where Maryland's been the last 2-3 years, I think is where
Right.
Penn State could be if they don't start spending some money in the transfer portal or flipping some high recruits.
Right. Um, yeah, it's definitely something to keep our eye on going forward. And again, what I'll say is, I mean, you can bring in like Oregon. Obviously, again, they had a great day. Nick had mentioned that they didn't have that many 5 stars. I'm okay with not signing 5 stars. Like, yeah, it's great to bring in like a nice high end recruit, but at the same time, when these kids show up, it's all about how hard you're going to work and if you're worth that 5 star, rating that you got once you get to the college football level. I think that's a completely different thing. Very excited for what Dan Lanning and Oregon did today as a whole. But like you said, with Penn State, they've had some great recruiting classes. They couldn't put results on the field. So I mean, as excited as I am I feel like we got some great additions through the transfer portal. I'm excited. Gabriel Moore, Novosad, and we just signed another, um, top tier quarterback recruit today. Our quarterback room's stacked, and that's great. But then you also think about in the future, is somebody going to get tired? Are they going to get up and leave? Manga was the other one that we just brought in today. They've all tweeted, "Hey, we're excited for the competition. We're excited to learn from Gabriel." And then once he's gone, although Moore is he has experience and he's a great recruit. We're ready to prove that we're just as good, if not better than him. So again, I'm excited for the quarterback room and to see where that goes. And I don't have an issue or a concern, I guess, for our quarterback room going forward. We got a lot of great wide receivers today. We flipped one from Ohio State and one from USC. That's great. Again, need to see them perform, and it's going to be nice to see that whole field. Hopefully Trayshawn Holden comes back next year. Tez Walker should, or not Tez Walker. Tez Walker's at UNC. Um, Tez Johnson will they'll both hopefully come back next year and reload for another season to give us some kind of experience on the outside. We bolstered our defensive line today. We got 2 great recruits. Looks like Nolan, the transfer from Texas A&M, is going to go to Ole Miss. Unfortunate for us, but still, happy to be in the running for that. But I think our D line has been our strength for the past couple of seasons, and we have great guys returning next year, and now we just added a couple more great recruits. I'm excited to see that. Our secondary, I feel like still needs a little bit of help. We just signed Kobe Savage, the transfer from Kansas State. He's obviously going to bolster that secondary immediately, but I would like some help on the outside too. Washington, when they beat us twice, it's because our secondary kind of let us down a little bit. There's still two really good Georgia defensive backs, cornerbacks in the portal. I would like to go sign one of them, but again, I'm not going to sit here and complain. And at the end of the day, like we just talked about, it's nice to have a banner day like this, recruiting and in the transfer portal. You still need to put the results on the field. So
Your
go ahead.
quarterback room, is that a set thing? Because I haven't been able to read or find anywhere where UCLA dude, it's
Yeah,
set that
he
he's going to
committed.
sit for a year. No. I know he committed, but I didn't know. I didn't know that he was going to sit for a
No,
year. I hadn't read that
yeah,
anywhere. Like I saw
no.
Dylan
So
Gabriel, committed, and then all of a
mhm.
sudden, week later, UCLA's backup, or what was he, a redshirt freshman, or I forget, not a redshirt
Yeah,
freshman.
he was a
He
true
was the
freshman.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was, but
he started some
he was
games.
just
Yeah,
he was just inexperienced this year. He had an
yeah,
interception or turnover problem, but
yeah,
um, is that the plan for him to sit and learn behind
yeah.
Dylan
No,
Gabriel for a year, or do
he
you think it's going to be something that Dan Lanning's like, let's let them play,
no.
let's let them work it
He
out?
he has come out and said, and his intention in going to UCLA was he wanted to sit for a year and get developed because Chip Kelly's been this quarterback guru. He wanted Chip Kelly to develop him and make him a better quarterback. He was perfectly fine for sitting for a season, learning, developing, and then kind of progressing from there. He never really got that chance at UCLA this year just because he kind of got thrown into the fire a little bit. So yeah, he has experience, but he wants to sit and be developed. And he also didn't feel like he fit into UCLA's scheme. Obviously, they're very kind of move the quarterback all around and all this other stuff. And Oregon, while they've had that with Bo Nix has had that ability. He's also not known for being a runner. That was one of the things we talked about when we brought up the Heisman. Is he didn't have all the rushing yards that James Daniels had. Well, that's not the offensive scheme. He could run when he needed to, and Moore is the same way, but he likes to sit in the pocket. So he has come out. Sorry, he not him specifically, at least I haven't found any interviews with him. His grandmother has come out repeatedly and said, "We hated the whole situation at UCLA. That's not what he wanted. That's not what he thought he was signing up for. So that's why he transferred." And so, yeah, I think he's more than fine sitting behind, especially somebody like Gabriel. Maybe he even uses the red shirt next season. Maybe Novosad moves up and he's going to be the number 2 next year. And Moore falls back to that third string just so he can make sure that one he saves an extra year of eligibility if he needs to or whatever. I'm not. I mean, maybe that's not even how it works. Maybe I'm wrong, but um, I think what I'm getting at, I think he's fine sitting for a year. I think he'll be happy, especially to sit behind a pretty good quarterback like Gabriel. You have your bones to pick about him, but at the end of the day, he's not trash. He's not a bad quarterback.
Bo
So
Nix wasn't the best at Auburn, and he transferred, and look what happened
yeah,
to him. I mean, there's something going on. Another quarterback question I had quick.
yeah.
Uh, Malik Murphy transfers to a non-Mike Elko coach Duke. What is at Duke that makes you think that that's a good decision for Malik to transfer to? Obviously, staying at Texas was not an option. Sarkisian has made it very clear that Quinn Ewers is coming back and that Arch Manning is the wonder boy, that they're expecting to play in the upcoming seasons afterwards. So, I mean, he had to go somewhere. I just don't know why Duke.
Yeah. I mean, looking at Duke's situation, obviously it sucks that Mike Elko's left, but again, he was a defensive-minded coach, and Duke still had a pretty good offense. And once Riley Leonard got hurt, it had its struggles and stumbles and so on. And so, I mean, I haven't seen a mass exodus from Duke. Obviously, they're going to lose a lot of talent to I think the NFL draft, which is a very weird statement to say, but nonetheless, I think Mike Elko has done a very good job of building that program up, getting good recruits to come there. Maybe I've missed it, but I haven't seen a mass exodus of those players transferring out. And so there, I think there'll be enough stability there. I also haven't seen who the head coach at Duke's going to be. Or
That's
is
why
it
I
Manny
just wonder
Diaz?
because I just Duke is Manny Diaz, but the reason I wonder is because which is another defensive coach, uh, is Riley Leonard has another year of eligibility and he transfers to Notre Dame. Elko leaves and or maybe Elko left first and then Riley Leonard said he was going to the transfer portal, but both of them exit. They
Hang on,
bring in Manny
first.
Diaz. Manny Diaz is at a Duke basketball game, and then the next day Malik is signed to Duke as a transfer. So like I just was very I guess I was just kind of confused. Obviously, you want to go where you're going to start, and by the looks at the roster, I would think that he has the best chance to start next season for Duke. I just kind of felt like there's a lot of other schools that he probably could have gone to based on how he did play for Texas this year and how he was in high school. I just didn't understand going to Duke, I guess.
I also don't see, like, I'm looking him up on 24/7. I don't see that he's committed to Duke. But yeah, it's like so. Regardless, if he did
Yeah.
choose to go there, I also think I think it's a good opportunity for him to prove that he can win. Because I don't think Duke's roster is going to be completely in shambles next year. We also talked about this earlier. Is the ACC? There's no true top dog to me in the ACC. Florida State's going to go through a big change next year without Jordan Travis and everything else going on. Clemson is still trying to kind of rebound. NC State looks for there's a lot of good teams at the top, but I don't think there's a true number one team. And so if you can go to Duke and give them an extra edge and push them over the top, and maybe get some other transfers to come there with you, I think that's a huge boost to that team. And they're not one of the worst teams, or they're not in bad shape, they're not in great shape. Maybe you can elevate that team, kind of boost your own stock at the same time. So maybe that's a factor behind it as well. That'll do it for this week's episode of Blitz Boys. We thank you guys as always for joining us. We're sorry Nick had to leave early, but don't forget to join us Friday night, 6:30 live on our YouTube. We're going to be putting some money on the UCF. Slade's not a huge fan of that, so maybe we'll be putting some other bets in as well, which will be fun to keep track of all night. And then again, eating hot wings every time that there's a score. It's going to get really interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun. We hope you guys join us live on YouTube, 6:30 as the game kicks off. But as always, thank you so much for joining us here on Blitz Boys. It was a fun bringing you this episode. We will see you guys Friday night and then right back here next Thursday morning for another edition of the Blitz Boys. Have a great rest of your day and enjoy some more college football bowl games.